In this video, I'll be showing you one hack that will transform the way you use Notion. This hack is used by Notion experts to create advanced looking workspaces. It's all about how I create things like this. These notification centers are surprisingly not that difficult to set up, and in this video, I'll break it down for you into simple steps. Make sure to stick around until the end for a bonus tip. So here we have a couple of examples of some notification centers that I've set up. So this first one is for a task list or a project database. So these are completely dynamic, meaning they do update as the data changes. So for example, if I add another task for today, this will then update to say you have 5 tasks due today, and it will also update every day with the date. So you do not physically have to input the date for today. This will just update automatically every single day. And then down here, I also have this sales dashboard, which would give you an overview of how many sales you've made today and an overview here of your orders. I also utilize this feature on my reading tracker template, which is available on my store, by the way, if you're interested. So I have this reading stats section here in the sidebar, so it will give you an overview of how many books you've read this month, how many you've read this year and in total, and it'll also tell you how much time you actually spend reading as well. So in today's video, I'm going to be showing you how to set up this notification center, which is for a task list or a project list. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any upcoming videos. Okay, so these are the databases that we're going to be working with, so I'm just going to talk you through them before we start building the notification center. So firstly, I have a to-do list, so I've just listed all of the tasks that I want to complete here. I have a date, so what day do I want to complete that task? And we also have a status property here, so I can select if it's not started, in progress, or complete. And secondly, down here we have this projects database, so it'll just list the projects, and there's a status property here, so I can say if it's a project that I've not started or if it's one that's currently in progress. So this is what I'm going to be working with, and from this we're going to build the notification center that I showed you at the beginning. So the first thing that I want to do is work out how many tasks I have that are due today. So just to let you know, today for me is November 20th, so I actually have 4 tasks due today. So I want to create that notification that says you have 4 tasks due today. So the first thing we're going to do is create a checkbox property that will automatically be checked if the date is today. So as I said, this is completely dynamic, so you don't have to update it every single day. It will automatically just look at the date, compare it to today's date, and check the box if it is today. So we're going to use a formula property. So I'm going to add another property here, select formula, and this one we're just going to call today ? And I'm going to click on the formula edit button so we get this panel, which is where we're going to write our formula. So in this formula, we simply just want to compare today's date to the date that is in this date property here. So to do that, we're going to type in the words format date, and I'm going to open the parentheses. Now this function is used to format a date into the formula. So firstly, I now need to select which date I want to include in our formula. So let's start by adding the actual date property from our table. So I'm telling it to format the date property into the formula. Next, I need to tell it what format I want that date to be formatted into. So I'm going to put comma, open a quotation mark, and let's just add the date format in here. So the one I'm going to go with is month, day, year, like this. So just ensure you're spelling it exactly like this. And I'm then just going to close the parentheses here. So essentially what this part of the formula is doing, it's simply formatting the exact date from our date property here into this format. And now we need to compare it to today's date. So I want to say, does this date format here match today's date? So I'm going to type equals, and then we're going to format today's date into the formula. So I'm going to use format date again so that it'll add the exact date into the formula, open the parentheses, and in this case we're actually just going to use the now function. So I'm going to type now, open and close parentheses. So this little part of the formula here will simply just input whatever the date is today, and again I need to tell it what format I want that date to be displayed in. So I'm going to put comma, and we're just going to write the exact same thing as we have here because it needs to match exactly. So again, I'm going to do quotation mark, we're going to do month, day, comma, year, and then close that quotation mark here, and finally I'm just going to close the parentheses here. So essentially now what this formula is saying is, does the date property here match today's date? Now whenever you ask a question like this inside a Notion formula that is a yes or no answer, it will always display a checkbox in the result. So if I just click done here, and if we have a look now in this column, as you can see, a checkbox has now appeared, and today is currently November 20th. So as you can see, next to the ones that are tagged as November 20th, the checkbox is checked, whereas for the other ones it's not checked. So the next thing that I want to work out is which of these tasks are overdue. So that just means that the deadline has now passed. So any that are dated as today are not overdue, they are today's tasks. But any here that have past dates that are not yet completed are overdue tasks. So I want to be able to check a checkbox for the ones that are overdue. So again, we're going to do the exact same thing. I'm going to add another formula. and we're going to edit the formula here. So there's two pieces of criteria that need to match here. We need the date to be a past date, and we also need the status to be anything other than done, because obviously if the task is complete, it doesn't matter that the due date is past. That's no longer an overdue task as it has been completed. So let's add this into our formula. So let's start by working out if the date has now passed. So we're going to use the date between property. So I'm going to type in date between like this and open the parentheses. So date between simply will work out how many days between two different dates. So the first date that we're going to input here is of course our date property. So I want to work out how many days are between the date property in this column here and today's date. So I'm going to put comma now. So if you remember, now we'll just input the current day of today, so I don't have to update this every single date. We'll just pull through whatever the date is now, comma. And now I need to tell it exactly what I want it to work out. So you could work out how many days, how many weeks, how many months, how many years are between these dates. But I need to tell it exactly what I want it to work out. So in this case, I want to work out the days between these two dates. So I'm going to just simply type in days like this in between two quotation marks. And we're just going to close off this parentheses here as well. Now to work out if it's a past due date, I want to check if the days between the due date and now are less than or equal to, so you just want to input it like this, -1. Now the reason that we're using -1 instead of 0 is because if we used 0 in this formula like this, it would include any tasks that are dated as today as an overdue task, which is not what I want. I don't want it to count tasks that are dated as today as overdue. So we're going to keep it as -1. So this is the part of the formula that is going to check whether or not the due date has now passed. So if I just click done, and let me just change the name of this to overdue question mark. So if I now look in this column, as you can see, any of the tasks that have a past due date, this box is now checked, whereas any that are dated as today, the checkbox remains unchecked, which is perfect. So it's only picking up overdue tasks. Now, the next part that we need to add is that some of these tasks, like this one, is done. So it's no longer an overdue task because I have now completed it. So I need to find a way of automatically unchecking the checkboxes for any that are already done. So let's go back to our formula. So this is our first condition, but I actually want two conditions and both of them need to be met for the checkbox to be checked. So we can actually use the AND function to do that. So I'm going to start by just wrapping this statement in parentheses to isolate it. So I'm going to put 1 at the start and I'm going to close it at the end. And then we're simply going to type in the words AND at the start and open another parentheses here. So this is our first statement. We now need to add the second one. So I'm simply just going to add a comma and we're now going to write our second statement. So in this case, we want to check that the status in this column is not done. So I'm simply just going to write that in formula terms. So we're going to start by adding in the status property, and we only want to count things where the status isn't done. So to write that inside of the formula, we can put exclamation mark equals, so this stands for is not equal to, quotation mark, and I'm going to write done. So this word here has to exactly match the words that are in the status property. So if you, for example, have finished instead of done, then it needs to exactly match. So in this case, it's exactly the words done. So that is what I'm going to include here. And finally, I'm just going to add another parentheses on the end to close off this AND statement here. So if I just click done, as you can see, these two tasks here have now become unchecked because they have a status of done. So it's only checking the checkbox here for ones that have a past due date and do not have a status of done. So for example, on this one, I could change this to done. And as you can see, that checkbox here has become unchecked. But if I just change it back to not started, the checkbox becomes checked once again. So therefore, we've managed to add a checkbox, which is only checking the box for actually overdue tasks. Okay, we're going to add one more checkbox property like this, but this time we're going to do it on our projects database. So next I want to work out how many active projects I have. So those are the projects that have a status here of in progress. So let's just add another formula property, but onto the projects database this time. And I'm going to call this one active project question mark, and I'm just going to click on the formula edit button. So this formula is actually much more simple than the last one. So in this case, we're just going to check which of these projects here have a status of in progress. So I'm simply just going to add the status property in here. We're going to add equals equals, and inside two quotation marks like this, we're going to write the exact match to the select property here. So this one is just going to be in progress. As I said, just make sure it's spelled exactly the same as it is here. And that's all we need to do. So this formula is simply going to check, is the status in progress? And if it is, it will check the checkbox. So if I just click done, as you can see, anywhere it says in progress are now checked, which is perfect. Okay, so now that we've added these properties, we can start setting up the actual notification center. So the notification center is actually a completely separate database, and it uses relations and rollups to pull through the details from these databases. So I'm going to show you how to set that up. So let's start by just adding another database down here. So /database, and I'm going to go with database inline. And this one I'm simply just going to call notification center, and I'll just hide the title here. You want to delete this tags property because we don't need it. And I'm also just going to delete 2 of the rows here because we only need 1 row in this database. Now you can name this row whatever you like. In this case, I'm going to name it today, as this is going to be the little card that shows an overview of my day. And I'm also just going to give it an icon as well. So if I just open the page and I'm just going to pick an icon here, let's just add, for example, a sun symbol like this one. So the first thing that I need to do here is connect our new notification center with these 2 databases so that I can start using the data that we have here. So we're going to use a relation property to do that. So I'm going to add a new property, and it's going to be a relation property, and it's going to ask me which database I want to link to. So we'll start with our to-do list database, and you want to ensure the limit is set to no limit so we can add as much data as we like. And I do want to show this on our to-do list database as well, and I'm going to click add relation. So as you can see, a new column has appeared here on our notification center, and if I just go up to our to-do list database, as you can see, we have a new column here as well. Now I'm also just going to do the exact same thing for this projects database. So let's just add another relation property, and in this case we're going to link to the projects database. And again, make sure the limit is no limit, and we are also going to show this on our projects database. So I'm just going to add that relation. Okay, so now that we've connected the databases, we do need to relate every single one of the projects and every single one of the to-do list items to our notification center so that they show up in these boxes. So in these new columns that we've added here, if you click on one of these boxes, it will bring up the today entry from our notification center. So you simply need to add this for every single row within the database. Now there is a quicker way to do it, and I'm going to show you how to automatically associate this as well. So firstly, what you want to do is just click on this little box here next to the name, and that will then highlight all of the rows within the database. And if you just go up here, you want to click on the notification center, and we just want to link this today page for every single one of these items. So if you just click on here, it will automatically add that for all of them. So as you can see, it's now populated as today. Now if I add something new to the table, it doesn't automatically add it, which is a little bit annoying because then you're going to have to select it every single time. Now there are a few ways that you can automatically have this associated with a new task. One of the easiest ones is to add a default template. So if I just click on this arrow here and add a new template, the only thing I'm going to add here is where it says notification center, we're just going to select that it needs to be associated with the today entry, and I'm just going to hit back, and again click on this down arrow, and next to this untitled new template that we've just added, I'm going to click on the 3 dots, and we're going to set it as default, and we're going to select for all views in the to-do list. So essentially what that means is anytime you add anything new to this to-do list, this template is automatically going to be added as default. And if you remember, we just selected the today entry on that template, so it will automatically add it for you. So if I just add a new to-do list item now, as you can see, that is automatically associated with it. One other way that you can do this if you don't want to add a default template is by adding a filter. So if I click on filter, we filter by notification center and just select the today entry as well. That will also automatically add this today entry as well. So we do also need to do the exact same thing in this projects database. So I'm just going to do that now. So I'm going to click on here, and for notification center, let's associate the today page with everything. And I'm also, as I mentioned, just going to add that default template as well, so that if I add any future projects, it will automatically be associated with the today page. And just don't forget to set this as default. Now you probably don't want to see these notification center columns on your actual table, so you can just click on them and hide them in view. So they are still there working in the background, but you don't need to see them, so it just looks a little bit neater on your actual to-do list. Okay, so now looking at our notification center, as you can see, all of the to-do list items and all of the projects have now been associated with this today entry, which is perfect. We can also hide these columns as well, because again, we don't really need to see them. Okay, so next we need to pull through the data from these databases into our notification center. So let's start by pulling through how many tasks are due today. So the way that we do that is using a rollup property. So rollups essentially just allow you to grab data from different databases and pull them into this one. So let's add a rollup property onto here. And this one we're just going to call today's tasks. Now the first thing to know about rollup properties is that you can only use it if there's already a relation between the 2 databases. So the first thing that you'll be asked when setting up a rollup is which relation you want to use. So in this case, we're going to start with our to-do list database. So I want to pull data from the to-do list database. So that's why I'm selecting that one. And then under property, it will pull through all of the different properties that we have within the to-do list database. So I can select which property I want to pull through into my notification center. So in this case, we're going to pull through this today formula formula property, which was the one that checks if the task is due today. So let's pull that one through. And then it's going to ask me what I want to calculate. So in this case, I want to calculate how many of those boxes are checked, so I know how many tasks are due today. So I can just select this checked option. And as you can see here, it's now counting that 4 tasks are due today, which is perfect. So if I just go back up here to check, as you can see, there are 4 checkboxes checked. So that is correct. There are 4 tasks due today. So I want to do the exact same thing for the overdue and the active projects checkbox as well. So let's start with the overdue one. Let's add another property. It's going to be a rollup property, and this one is going to be our overdue tasks. Again, we're going to select the relation. So this one is going to be the to-do list database. We're going to select the appropriate property. So this one is going to be the overdue formula, which checks if the task itself is overdue. Again, we want to calculate how many of those boxes are checked. So it's now telling us that there are 3 overdue tasks. So if I just check up here, that is correct. There are 3 checkboxes checked here. And finally, let's pull through this active project one as well. So we're going to add another rollup property. In this case, the database that we're going to select is actually the projects database. The property that we want to pull through is the active project formula, which was the checkbox, and we want to calculate how many of those are checked. I'll just change the name of this to active projects. Okay, so now that we have the data that we need, we can now start adding our labels so that it looks a little bit nicer in the notification center. So we're actually going to use a formula once again to do that. So let's add another property. This one is going to be a formula. So we'll start with the today's tasks one. So this label is going to say something along the lines of you have 4 tasks due today. So let's just call it today's tasks label like this. And I'm going to click on the formula edit button to bring up our formula. So what we're going to do here is we're going to start with 2 quotation marks like this. And inside them, we're going to write exactly what we want the formula to display in the box. So we want it to display you have space, then I'm going to put the plus symbol, and after you have, I want to display the actual number of tasks that I have today. So I'm just going to put that property in. So today's tasks plus, and then I'm going to put 2 quotation marks, and in here I'm going to write what I want it to display after today's tasks. So I'm going to put space tasks due today. So the main thing that you need to ensure is that you are adding these spaces where they need to be. So I've got a space before and after the actual number of tasks. So this will say you have 4 tasks due today. So if I just click done, as you can see in this box, it is now bringing up that I have 4 tasks due today. And as I said, this is completely dynamic, so it will update with the data. So let's just change one of the due dates here. So let's just change this one to today's date. So as you can see, I now have 5 tasks due today. This checkbox has updated accordingly. And if I just go down here, it does now say you have 5 tasks due today, so it is working correctly. So I can now hide this one as we no longer need to see it. We have this instead. So we're now going to do the exact same thing for these ones. So let's just add another property. It's going to be a formula, and this one is going to be our overdue tasks label. I'm going to click formula edit, and again we're going to add the quotation marks. So this one is going to be you have space plus, this one is going to be the overdue tasks rollup plus quotation marks. So we're going to do space overdue tasks today. So you have 3 overdue tasks today. So if I click done, as you can see, that's now displaying here in the box. And the final one we're going to add is now this active project. So I'm going to click on here, formula. So this one is going to be active projects label, formula edit. So I'm going to put in the quotation marks. So it's going to be you have space plus, and we're going to select the active projects rollup plus quotation marks, and inside here we're going to put active projects and done. And as you can see, that's now displaying in here. Now, one other thing that you can add to make this look a little bit better is a little arrow before the text. So if I just click on this one again and edit the property, just in front of you have, I can add in a little arrow like this. So if I just add a couple of spaces so that it's spaced out and click done, as you can see, we now have an arrow here. So it'll just look a little bit better on the card. So I'm just going to add that for all 3 of these. And I'm just going to hide these other properties here because we don't need to see them now. They just need to work in the background, so they'll update these labels. And the final label that we had on the example, if you remember, was a label that tells you what today's date is. So let's add that one in now. So again, that's simply a formula. So I'm just going to click on here, add a new formula, and let's just call this one today's date. And I'm going to hit formula edit. Now it's actually pretty simple. It just uses the now function that we used earlier. So if you remember, this was the now function. So if I just add that and nothing else, it will just return the current date and time. So if I just click done, as you can see, it's pulling through today's date and the time. Now I actually don't want it to include the time. I just want it to include the date. So let's just go back onto the formula, and to get rid of the time, we're going to type dot format date like this. So I'm telling it how I want the date to be formatted, open parentheses, and inside 2 quotation marks, I'm going to put the format. So I'm just going to put the month, day, comma, and the year. And that is the format. And then after the quotation mark, we're going to add another parentheses. So if I hit done, as you can see here, the time has been removed. So it's just showing today's date. And the final thing I want to add is I want it to say today's date is and not just the date. So if let's go back into the formula, and we're going to use the same system that we've used for these other formulas. So I'm simply just going to put 2 quotation marks, and I'm just going to write today is space, and just make sure you put a plus symbol here. And if I just hit done, as you can see, it now says today is November 20th. And you can also just add that arrow in here as well if you like, so that they all match. Now the final thing that we need to do here is change this to a gallery view so that we can see it on a card rather than a table like this. So if you just click on the 3 dots here, select layout, and we're going to hit gallery. I do just want to get rid of all this white space here. So under card preview, instead of page content, I'm going to set that to none. And then I just need to add all of the properties onto the card. So if I click on properties, we want to see all of these labels ones. So let's start with the today's date property. Then we're going to add the today's tasks label, the overdue tasks label, and then our active projects label. So now that I've added those onto the card, as you can see, it displays like this. You can also change the name here. So let's change this just to notification center, and feel free to change this icon as well. I might change it to a little bell like this. Okay, and that is our notification center. Now I did promise that I would show you one bonus tip at the end of the video. So the bonus tip is how you can actually change the colors of the text inside the formula. So I think it would be really cool if where it says 2 overdue tasks, if that was bold and red, so it really emphasizes that you have 2 overdue tasks. So what we're going to do is we're just going to click on here, and that's going to bring up the overdue tasks formula that we wrote earlier. So to make it bold and red, we're simply just going to at the end type dot style like this, open parentheses, and we're going to put a quotation mark, B quotation mark, so that is going to bold the text, comma, and quotation mark, I'm going to write what color I want the text to be. So I want it to be red, quotation mark, and I'm just going to close the parentheses. So this is just telling the formula how I want this text here to be styled. So if I click done, as you can see, this has now gone red. I also want the number 2 here to be red as well. So let's just go back into the formula. So I'm just going to copy this dot style. So you do have to add it after every single element. So after overdue tasks here, I'm just going to put my cursor here and click paste. And now that I've added that after the number of overdue tasks, if I hit done, it'll now say you have 2 overdue tasks today. So it's just an extra little touch that you can do to make this even more customized. So you can do this with any color. So if you wanted this to be, for example, blue, I'll just change the text here to blue. Let me just change it here as well. Click done, and as you can see, it's now coming up blue. So you can just play around with that to create something a little bit more unique. And that's it. You can check out all of my pre-made Notion templates, like this advanced second brain template, which is an all-in-one productivity system, over on my store. I'll leave a link in the description box below. And if you did find this video useful, then I'd really appreciate if you could give the video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel, as I post new Notion tutorials like this one twice a week.